All right. Remember the headline last time for what I thought a good headline was what the book gave us on chapter 7. So go back to the beginning of chapter 7 in your books, and it's the heading they put in there is traditions and commandments and the difference between the two. And we talked about how, back to our little checklist, right? Pharisees and we are very good at taking these commands that we have no hope of completely obeying on our own. We don't. But making them so that we think we can completely obey them on our own. And then we feel pretty good about ourselves. And then we don't need a savior because look at us, we're pretty good. And it's a daily struggle. It's something that I can't remember the hymn. I can remember the line, though. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy grace, Lord, like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. And I think that's a true statement. We are debtors to grace every day, and our hearts wander. And, I like the picture of let thy grace, Lord, like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. So this is the state of humanity. It is normal. It's okay to accept that and then to ask for help. But anyway, this is what he spent time doing because he was surrounded by the people who rejected him were the religious folks who in theory knew the most about who was going to be coming next, right? And then, you have various expressions of this, but, I'm looking at verse 9, and he said to them, you have a fine way of rejecting the commandment of God in order to establish your tradition. So we'll trade it. It reminds me of one of God's responses to Job in the book of Job. He said, would you even condemn me to justify yourself? Can a fault finder contend with the Almighty? So you would blame me, says God. I'm God, and you're going to blame me so that you could be in the right. It sounds horrible, but I would bet we do it all. All of us do it every day in some way. And so anyway, knowing that's good. But you had this sense of the inner group didn't really get it. Pharisees, scribes didn't really get it. He was a bit offensive to them. And then you have there were the two odd stories at the end. One was the Syrophoenician woman who is not in the inner circle and yet has enough, and she's a Gentile, but she knows enough to say, even the dogs, get the scraps under the table. So shows faith in this Jesus who owes her nothing and to whom she has no, prior commitment, but knows he can do this and says it boldly. And then the last one was the deaf man, which I had, that epiphany in front of you that I wondered if this was connected in some way to that ancient ritual, the opening of the mouth ritual that the ancient Near Eastern religions had, where they would take whatever they made their icon out of, their idol, to look like a, Shamash, the sun god. They would take it, and actually there's some really fun stories about Dagon is the god of Eglon. I can't remember. He's one of the local gods. And Yahweh keeps knocking him over overnight. And they're like, what's going on with this? Dagon's on the ground. And there's all sorts of polemics. I mentioned last time about Isaiah, who just has so much fun harassing folks. I think we lost her. You could take the whole thing and...
I think she dropped her phone or something.
Well, it just says her name now.
Yeah.
So I think she's off. This is high technology,
What do I do? I call her
You just
back?
do whatever you would normally do, yeah. And then you could just set it back on the table. So, anyway, that was, I thought, was going on. He is healing. He is showing himself.
Okay, let's see if we can get it back. Oops, we lost you. Okay.
If you want to read for us, I'll give you this. You
Okay,
could hold
on.
it, you
I'm
could
gonna
just
try to
put
get
it
back.
somewhere.
Wow, it keeps, how come it's shutting down? It's just hanging up on her.
You don't even have to take that off if you don't want to.
Okay.
Is it annoying to
No,
hold
I thought
it?
it was a clip. It's not a clip.
Well, the bottom comes off as a magnet if you want to
Oh.
magnetize it.
Yeah, I'm trying to, it keeps hanging up on you. Hold on just a second and, oh, there we go, okay. Okay. Uh-oh, it went away again.
No, she's there.
No, that's all right. Let me see if I can,
So if internet's,
I know,
You can hear it.
okay. All right, so,
I know nothing about all this
no,
technology.
it's all right. The
Zero.
internet's down here.
What's
must
that?
be
Zero
why.
knowledge of the tech.
you,
I'm gonna
Yeah,
hand you back
I know
to
nothing.
Karen, but you might have to redo this.
you're fine. Just set it. I see me and I see her, so it's perfect.
Yeah, I see you.
Thank you. Oh, that's perfect, Penelope. All right. So let's waste no more time and dive into chapter 8. And Sue, let's go for let's see.
1 through 13. 1 through how?
Yeah.
Okay. Jesus feeds the 4,000. In those days, when again a great crowd had gathered and they had nothing to eat, he called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way, and some of them have come from far away. And his disciples answered him, How can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? And he asked them, How many loaves do you have? They said 7. And he directed the crowd to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves, and having given thanks, he broke them, and gave them to his disciples to set before the people, and they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fish, and having blessed them, he said that these also should be set before them. And they ate and were satisfied. And they took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. And there were about 4,000 people, and he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha.
Actually, let's stop there if you don't mind.
Okay.
And I don't know if it'll work, but if you put that kind of in the middle, maybe it'll catch other people when they're talking. We'll have to look into this. And I wish I had actually faced it the other way. It's facing me. The mic part, there you go. I wish I had done that sooner and realized that we'd lost some audio. But we did, Exodus was fine. So that means, Jeanette, that's the one you missed, right? You didn't get the Exodus one. That one worked.
Right.
So at least there's that. But yeah, there are a bunch missing, and I don't really know why. But anyway, all right. Does this kind of sound familiar to you? This first scene?
Absolutely.
We've been here, haven't we?
Yes.
Yep.
And this time, let's actually somebody with one of those little books can help me with the page, but this was in chapter 6,
Yeah.
verses
On page,
31.
38.
So we have this.
Are you talking about when he fed the crowd before?
Yes. So there are 5,000 there,
Yeah.
and now we have 4,000, and it's the multiple feedings happens in other gospels as well. So the presumption is that this happened on more than one occasion. And the specifics are less important than the fact that lots of people, remember with the 5,000, it measured 5,000 men, meaning there were even more than that if there were women and children as well. So lots of people had lots of chances to see this God. And it was the regular people who were catching on that he was something special. Notice his motivation. When he feeds them, he's not trying to show off and have a nice dinner party. What was his reason?
He had compassion upon them because they were with him 3 days
Yeah.
and wouldn't be able to get anything to eat.
Yeah. And they'd faint on the way. So again, you remember, insofar as there's a pattern with the Pharisees and scribes, you almost get it like they're in the shadows, and then they come in and pounce with questions, and then they recede. And here you have, almost like the air we breathe, a huge crowd that hangs out with him for 3 days, listening. That's a level of respect and humility and trust, and he was a teacher, and they needed what he had to teach. So similar, he says, how can, and of course the disciples once again, look at verse 4. How can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? Still didn't get it. And he said, well, how many loaves do you have? So he directed the crowd to sit down on the ground, took the 7 loaves, having given thanks, broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before the people, and they set them before the crowd. Very similar. Remember the other one, it said he told them to put them in groups of, was it 25 or 10 or 20, whatever, something like that. Right? 25, 100? I can't remember. So yes, we have this recollection that mere 2 chapters ago, we had a similar story. And here again, the disciples think, whoa, we're in the desert. What can we feed them? Now, notice the language. Having given thanks, I'm in verse 6, he broke the loaves, and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. Does that sound familiar? He broke them, broke the bread, gave thanks, and broke the bread and gave it.
It's like the Last Supper.
Like the Last Supper, like communion. Exactly. So if that's the case, this is often where I know I've mentioned many times that I think this is the Bible's high literature, that it coheres in a way that most don't expect it to, so they don't notice it. But let's just presume the Holy Spirit had a hand in that phrasing. He gave thanks, and he broke the bread, and he gave it to them. And it should remind you of the Last Supper, and it should trigger what we do in remembrance of that, which is communion, right? Why would it matter? Like, give me some connection. Can you see a connection between the significance of Jesus breaking his bread and giving it, and what we understand about communion and this passage? That was a very wordy. Yeah, what about his body? What is this? Why is he bringing this up? This is bread, literal bread, in a literal desert, which he's literally breaking and distributing, right? And he did that again on the Last Supper. But he told us elsewhere the significance of that. When you do this in remembrance of me. So it's connected elsewhere in the Bible to his own death, that he gave up his body for us, right? And we get that from communion, especially in the Catholic tradition. You get that very clearly. This is the sacrifice, and the same with the wine and the blood. Fish don't kind of factor in, but that's okay. We're not there yet, because his phrasing has to do with the bread. So what about any guesses, any ideas why this idea of Jesus as the one who, the sacrificial lamb, the one who gives his body for the people, would come up here? And it's fine to guess. And if you're wrong, I'll just laugh at you and tell you that.
Well,
He's preparing.
He will.
Preparing what?
Preparing us.
Yeah.
Know that this is his body.
Yep. But why here? Why now?
Is going to do it.
It's foreshadowing his death.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
And remember, for those of you who were at the Exodus study, part of the significance of that was they ate manna for 40 years, which God provided. This is not lost on Mark. This idea of God provided the bread, or the little coriander wafer that looked like dew. And here again, they're in a desert without food. And who provides it? Well, God, but in the form of Jesus. And it foreshadows, as you said, it's a great word. It's sort of hinting at that it's this God who provided manna in the wilderness. It is this God, Jesus, who provided bread in this wilderness, who is ultimately going to provide what you need, your daily bread, and ultimately to salvation. Sorry, Penelope, did I
no, that's
step
right.
on something?
Jesus
Okay.
also hands it to the disciples, who kind of signifies that they are going to be
Yeah,
sharing this with the people in the future, and look how it multiplies.
yeah.
After.
That's great, yeah. Yeah.
There's always baskets left over.
So not only foreshadowing his death, but also his resurrection.
Well, and the ministry,
Yeah, the
yes.
ministry.
And we saw that. We saw that already. Remember, we had that kind of inverse in chapter 5, I think? Yeah. Nope. Yeah, it's not 5, it's 6. Where you have almost the inverse of the beginning of the gospel, where you have Jesus begins his ministry in the first chapter after John is, I was going to say hospitalized,
Beheaded.
imprisoned first, right? And then he goes to the wilderness, and then he begins his ministry. And here, and back in chapter 6, we noticed that he's rejected among his own. John the Baptist now dies. So John the Baptist in chapter 1 was imprisoned and thus not in the picture anymore. And then Jesus begins his ministry. Here, John the Baptist is killed. And then he sends his people. Am I wrong on this? Wait a minute. Where's is it not till end of it? Where does he send out the, I'm looking for where he sends out the disciples for the first time. I thought it was there, but I'm not
Oh,
finding.
yeah, it is in 6. It's at verse 7 on page 34.
Thank you.
Oh, you don't have this Bible.
That's okay, I got the verse 7 bit. Thank you, yes, there it is. So they go out, and then they come back all excited, right? Like, you won't believe, and people were following them. And they too were told, don't bring bread with you. God provides for you. So you have these themes that keep coming up, and that's on purpose. I believe it's on purpose. I think that I remember the first time I listened to Bach and realized how he repeated like movements that were in the bass and the treble, and sometimes inverted them. And it was fascinating to see how, it's a far more sophisticated thing than row your boat, where you can do it in a round and it matches, it was stunning to me. Well, there is that these are designed to fit together in such a way that one informs the other. So what we're here, he's feeding them again. You still see, on purpose, the disciples' thickness and his generosity and his compassion, but it's also a foreshadowing of, I take care of this. I provide the manna in the wilderness. I provide the bread in the wilderness, and I'm going to use the hands of my disciples. And was it last time or the time before when we had determined, it was chapter 6 again. That was a big chapter, where he talks, I might be wrong about that. Is that the beginning? Sorry, guys. This is the downside of a study Bible, is that only this much of the page is Bible and this is study. Lots of footnotes, and I don't always... the part where he says, who's my mother and my brother? That bit. So he begins to distinguish that you're going to win a prize today for getting all these things. Yeah, you do.
3,
Thank you.
31.
And we talked about that his family are those who hear him and obey him and do his will. And you see that here again. Okay, so then what happens? He says, and they had a few small fish. And having blessed them, he said that these also should be set before them. Now it's passive voice. Having blessed them, he said. I should have checked on this. It would be clear in the Greek if it's singular or plural. It's probably singular the way they wrote it. So they had a few small fish. Just shows up. And they had those. And he said, okay, let's give them those too. And once again, we gathered 7 baskets. Meaning, just like we said before, if there are leftovers, how many hungry people are left in the crowd? None.
They're all satisfied.
They're full. Yeah. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha. Now, that's the part that Sue read. I'm going to just read this little section right here. The Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. And he left them and got into the boat again and went to the other side. So we don't know what they asked. We don't know what he said to them. He just said, why does this generation want a sign? Not going to get a sign. Except what did we just have? He miraculously fed people in the desert with only, how many, 5 loaves, 7 loaves, whatever they had. That wasn't a sign? He opened the ears and the mouth of a deaf person. That's not a sign? He walked on water. That's not a sign? What's he looking for? And a sign from heaven to test him. They want like something that they can control. They say, okay, here you go. If you're really God, not that anyone here has ever done that. If you're there, Lord, I'll know it if my bank account just swells up in the next hour by $10,000. Boom. Then I'll know it. It's a test that's an unreasonable test. So, again, the next section here. I'll just read it because it's got punch. Now they had forgotten to bring bread. So they're in the boat. They had just fed 4,000 people. It's a miracle. They gather up things. They immediately, his favorite word, right? Immediately got into the boat.
And leave all the bread.
Apparently, because they forgot it, right? Now they had forgotten to bring bread, and they had only 1 loaf with them. And they only had 1 loaf. And he cautioned them, saying, watch out. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Now, they forgot to bring bread, had only one loaf, and then there is no obvious connection to me that Jesus was thinking about, oh shoot, we only have one loaf of bread. It seems to me he's reacting to that weird confrontation that made him sigh deeply just before. So he cautioned them, saying, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Now that's a very strange statement, but leaven, yeast, what does that do?
It makes the bread rise.
It makes, it grows things, right?
Yeah.
So beware of what they're doing. And of Herod, who's got a lot of power. So then they're saying, oh, shoot. Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? So they connected. They're not saying it, right? Or they did. Discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. He's connecting this to the confrontation. They're connecting it to, we only have one loaf. We got to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. And he says, why are you talking about bread? Don't you get it yet? And I mean, that's, obviously I'm paraphrasing. You have the actual version, right? Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember? By the way, that harkens back to that weird quote we had at the beginning of the book. I think we did. Hang on. Yes, the reference, elusive reference to Isaiah in the very beginning of chapter 1. And then that's taken over for Elijah or John the Baptist. But the idea of a voice calling in the wilderness, that comes from Isaiah. And Isaiah is the one that was told, God says, who's going to go for me? Who can I send? Isaiah said, I'll go. And he said, what's the message? And the message was, tell them, hear and hear, but never, see and see, but never perceive, hear and hear, but never understand. I think this is coming in play here. So he says, having ears, do you not see, eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up? And they said, 12. And the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up? And they said, 7. And he said, do you not yet understand? I'm not talking about bread. Bread is not the issue. That's not what you have to beware of. Why do you think he's so, remember I've said several times that Mark's pattern is to have like a sandwich, right? So you have the feeding of the 4,000. And then we have this the meat in this case is this Pharisees wanting a sign from heaven. He sighs and said, no sign. Why do these people keep wanting a sign? No sign's given them. And then we're back to the feeding and the bread. And why are you so stubborn, people? So what, I don't know, thoughts about that? Because I have argued, it's not me, others have argued this. I just thought it was a good argument, so I'm going to give it to you, is the idea of making the sandwich is that each part illuminates the other. That the feeding of the 4,000 and the failure of the disciples to get it is to help us, it's informing us about this whole, that middle, very small part about the Pharisees coming, and vice versa. Any ideas how? Why? I'll give you a hint. Well, this is what I think. The hint is a sign. They wanted a sign from heaven. We start with the 4,000 feeding, which some
Sounds
might
like a
argue
sign.
kind of sounds like one, yeah. And then it ends with, did you not see what just happened? And it seems like Jesus is saying the very same thing. What was that all about? Instead, what he's saying, and it still leaves us a bit confused about this leaven of the Pharisees and leaven of Herod. It's as if it's a force that will continue to grow. Be careful. Watch out for that. They're not giving up. They're going to keep coming. And they do. Does that make sense, guys?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
As much sense as it makes.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, because I always wonder when it says that, are your hearts hardened? I mean, I think at some point it says that God hardened their hearts. That God's the one that allows us to hear or not hear. So I always wonder why somebody hears or doesn't hear. If the disciples' hearts were hardened, the Pharisees' and hearts were hardened.
Well, what you have, that's true. There are times when it says that God did that. Here, it's like calloused. They're just not letting in. You don't feel things you should feel. You don't perceive things. I think it's why it's preceded with, you've got ears, can't you hear? You've got eyes, why can't you see?
It's a little overwhelming.
It is.
For me, I probably wouldn't get it.
Oh, sure, exactly.
Because I don't process in real time.
That's good. They gave you 2,000 years then, huh?
Yeah. I still don't get it. Right.
But you're right. This is not easy. This is all new. They couldn't even remember from the previous 2 chapters that he had.
They did remember. They did remember. He questioned them.
In the end.
And they remembered.
But here they're like, where are they going to get food? That was their first reaction. He's like, boy. So, yes, it's not easy to understand. What was that?
I was just like, why doesn't, are they just so naive that they just, they're just.
And here we go again.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm laughing. It's like, here we go.
Yeah.
It just isn't sinking in.
So, I think this is a really good next section.
Okay.
Want to read, Penelope?
Sure.
You could. We'll just do that in one section, 22 to 26.
Jesus heals a blind man at Bethsaida. And they came to Bethsaida, and some people brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" And he looked up and said, "I see people, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he opened his eyes. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. And he sent him to his home, saying, "Do not even enter the village."
Thanks. So, Bethsaida is a lot closer to home now. Now, we've had healings, yeah? Have we had a blind person
Yes,
given sight before?
yes,
We have?
yes.
Where? I could be wrong. I didn't think so.
That, he spit and did mud or whatever.
This is the first time it mentions.
And then he says, now go and wash.
That was mouth and ears. We could easily, my phone's over there. We could find that out. To my best recollection is the first blind. And that's significant because healing of the blind is not done. And it in the prophets is a unique Messiah thing.
Wasn't it where it says that the scales fell off his eyes? We see that with Acts, that it was this metaphorical. He could see when he couldn't. We have that of Paul. He was blinded after his encounter. But this is, to my knowledge or to my Sue, do you have Google on your
Yeah.
phone? Could you look up healing blind in the Gospel of Mark or something like that? I should have brought something else, but that's mine, that's yours. We can't, no fact checking, you can't fact check me. But I do actually want this fact checked. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Because it's like another level. That's what I think of it. He's moved on. We're above and beyond. Let's see. Sorry for taking this time.
Blind Bartimaeus.
Blind Bartimaeus, where's that? That's later, though.
Yeah, it's later.
Mm-hmm.
The man born blind, John 9.
Nope.
Born blind since birth. Yeah. The miracle, Jesus spat on the ground, made mouth with saliva,
Yep.
applied to the man's eyes.
That's this one.
That's this one. Pharisees. Yeah, and then the blind man at Bethsaida, Mark 8.
So where was the spit? Did it give you a citation?
No, it gives me a place.
Where?
In the pool of Siloam.
Siloam. That's in, but that's in Acts.
Okay,
Good. I'm right.
you were right.
I think there's a reason I think this. I mean, there's a reason I point this out and needed to double check. Because it's a big deal to heal the blind, historically, biblically.
And then there's one more.
Yes?
Jesus heals 2 blind people, 2 men.
Mm-hmm.
In Matthew 9:27-31, they cry out repeatedly, "Jesus, have mercy on us, Son of David," and he touched their eyes.
Jesus, I mean, we're supposed to stick with Mark,
You know,
but that's, of course, in my head, too. Son of David. That's a weird thing to call him. Does anybody know what the significance of Son of David has? What?
Well, that's the lineage of the Messiah, right?
yeah, the
So-
lineage of Messiah.
And David was promised that the Messiah will come from you. And if you go back through the healing story, I mean the stories of the prophets rather, it's only the Messiah who can restore sight to the blind. Son of David is another way of referring to someone as the Messiah. It's especially poignant in the book of Matthew, which we'll have to save for another time, but I'll just give you this nickel version. The book of Matthew begins with a genealogy that most of you probably get glossy-eyed when you go through it. And the thing about it is it's split into 3 sections, and it said 14 generations each, 7 times 2, these are significant numbers. It actually skips some generations. That's my way of saying, not that they're dumb and they can't count, but there's a higher purpose to putting these things together. And they were fully aware of it. So 14 from, he starts with, oh man, I can't believe I'm not remembering this. He starts with, I think he starts with Abraham. But I might be wrong. My goodness, how many pages to just get a chapter back? Son of Abraham. Yeah. So he says Abraham was the father. He starts with Abraham. And it's 14 generations till he gets to David. And then there are 14 generations till he gets to the fall of Jerusalem for the exile. Yeah. That's significant because he sees these as major touch points. Abraham, who we'll talk about when we do our, when we go through the Bibles, like the high points that we have to keep connected, was promised early on that he was the first one told because he believed he was considered righteous, not because of what he did. You have the beginnings of the gospel pronouncement there that it isn't what you do, it's by trusting God. And he also promised him an heir. And now this is a man 90 years old who'd been waiting a long time for an heir. His wife's a mere 10 years younger. It's not looking any better. And he believes that this is going to happen still, which frankly is a little crazy. But God could do that, sure. So that's the first point. And he is told, look at the stars. You see those stars? That's how many descendants you're going to have. You won't be able to count them. And then you skip ahead to David, who is very much an Abraham figure. But he's a man after God's heart. And he gives him a promise that his house will never end. But he makes house not be necessarily physical kingdom, but the role of David, the king, he's the archetypal king, won't ever end. And even the fall is significant, but it doesn't factor in here. So you have these touch points that are in Mark's head when he tells us this story about the blind man. All right, what about this process thing? What do you think?
Process of seeing men like trees.
Well, yeah, that it wasn't immediate, that because at other points he heals the paralytic early on. He gets up and carries his own mat. Well, where did the muscle strength suddenly come from? Muscles atrophy. You got to go to rehab. Get back up to speed. Yeah. And here, unlike that, it's a process, right? So and the blind man asked him to touch him. So he took him by the hand, led him out of the village. He doesn't want to be around the crowds now. Right? And when he'd spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, do you see anything? He said, I see people, but they look like trees walking. It's fuzzy. Then he laid his hands on his eyes again. And he opened his eyes, and his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. What's that about? Why is there a multi-step process here? I don't know the answer. Don't panic that there's a right answer and you're not noticing it. I don't know the answer. I just wonder if you guys have any thoughts about that.
See if he believed.
Maybe, or he...
And he only saw trees and okay, what's the next step, But he trusted, and the next step is that he saw
He
clearly.
put his hands on his eyes again. I don't know the answer. I always found this odd. I'm sure there have been answers posited. I just don't know them. I spent more time in the Old Testament. But he doesn't want him going back through the village.
Is it too overwhelming to suddenly see
Maybe.
clearly?
Maybe. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen some people who there's the cochlear implant they can do and help people hear when they haven't been able to hear. There are some for whom it's really overwhelming. It's too much. So it's possible, yeah.
Like cataract surgery now, you can sort of elect how much clearance you want.
Is that true?
Yeah,
Ah.
I went through this with my husband, because they asked him, he'd worn glasses as he was, I don't know, a child, 15 maybe. And so when the doctor did his first eye, he said, how much clarification do you want? Do you want 20/20? Gave him a choice.
Yeah. Interesting.
And Harold said, I don't think I would feel like myself if I didn't wear glasses. He was now
Interesting.
70-something,
Yeah. So maybe
he
it's
elected
too.
not to have 20/20 vision.
Yeah. So maybe it is let's take it slow.
And that was years ago, so maybe, things have changed again since then. But,
Yeah. I think that's a great option. Yeah. But either way, what you have is he's doing something that hadn't been done. Healing of the blind. And the reason I think it's important to, whether it was the first or not, is what comes next. Verse 27. And
Well,
sorry.
the other thing I was going to say is there's more joy in the stepping up.
It
It's a more.
increases anticipation or something, or?
Have you all ever heard of the Emmaus Walk? The Catholic Church has another name for it. But in the Protestant churches, there's a movement that started many years ago where you can, once in your life, go on an Emmaus Walk. And it's usually at some turning point in your life. My husband-to-be, when he was my fiance, sponsored me to go on an Emmaus Walk before we got married. And he'd already been on an Emmaus Walk sponsored by our minister in our church. Anyway, so it's a 3-day, 3-night experience. And you're just constantly in prayer or being prayed for and supported by people. You don't have to fix your meals. The meals appear like manna out of heaven. And there's a study, and it's very intense. And it's single for women, and it's separate for the men. It's not integrated. And then we came out my retreat happened to be in Milford, Ohio, in a former Jesuit retreat center, because it was normally held in the basement of a big inner city Cincinnati Methodist church, which was under construction at the time. So that's how we wound up at the Jesuit center. And we came out the third night, and it was dark, and we were walking up this little hill. It was out in the country along a river stream. Little Miami River, maybe. Anyway, and we were all in this little group, we Emmaus pilgrims, they called us. And we started to see in the distance, up the hill, shadows, and somebody in the group said, "What is that?" And then we walked a little bit further, and somebody said, "Oh, it's people." And it was our entry into what they called the fourth day. So you have a 3-day Emmaus Walk, and then you're on the 4th day forever. So that was, and it was very joyous, and it was very interesting. It was a very happy moment. So maybe that's what it was. That's what this reminds me of.
Okay. That's great. And now we have a moment. This is a high point. This is a key moment. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they told him, "John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter, my buddy Peter, stubborn, headstrong, fearless Peter, who jumps in the water and sinks when he sees Jesus. And he puts his cloak on first. What? Anyway, says, "You are the Christ." And Jesus, strictly charged them to tell no one. This is a turning point. He heals the blind man. And then he says this. Now, I don't know how long Peter thought this was the case. But to me, it at least is significant that it follows the healing of the blind man. Restoring sight is the Messiah's job. The Christ is the same word. Well, Christos, Messiah, similar. And he said, "Don't tell anyone." Even if they'd forget again, you know. How many did you feed? It's a desert. Where are we going to get food, you know? But we have this turning point. And now he goes on, in the rest of this chapter, we have the hard stuff starts to be told, okay? And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer. Oh, we lost her again. It's when she moves a lot. She must be hitting it, you know, touching it off. Oh, she's calling. I could do it. Just take.
Okay.
All right. You're back.
I'm back.
He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said this plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Psst, stop talking that way. You're going to discourage the troops. We're all in it with you, but don't say it." But what does Jesus say? Turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." Well, there's a turnaround. He's the only one who gets the right answer. So Jesus begins to talk about what that entails. He's going to suffer. He's going to be betrayed, killed, rejected. And I like how Mark makes the point of saying he said this plainly. We're not talking parables anymore. It's not an allusion. It's not a hint. It's not, just some vague metaphor he's using. He was very clear. And Peter didn't like that. And his reaction, Jesus' reaction that would depress me for a week. "Get behind me, Satan." And the next part is why. You're not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. What do you think that means in the case of Peter hearing about Jesus must suffer and die and all that?
Well, it's the leaven of the Pharisees.
Yeah, keep going.
That's all I got.
But what does it have to do with, what's if he has the things of man in mind when he reacts to Jesus's plain account of what's going to happen, what is Peter assuming?
Well, the triumphant king.
Bingo, yes.
And to rule
Yeah.
to crush the Romans and rule, set the
That's
people.
not how it's going to happen. No. We're going to finally get to the tipping point in our followers. It's going to be great. Don't say that.
Yeah.
And he rebukes Jesus. That's bold. But the strength of Jesus's rebuke back is to me startling, because he said, "You have in mind not the things of God, but the things of man." That's a really big deal. Are we looking at the world through the ways God has shown us, or are we looking at it the human ways? Makes all the difference. It means what Jesus himself tells them about what's to come is offensive if you are not thinking of God and God's ways, which are very different from ours, right? We'll finish this up next time because it's sort of connected, but then we're going to be advancing. Things go pretty quickly here. So we'll pick up in verse 34, but kind of be talking a little bit about that first section, about what's going to happen and the significance of that, and the radical, after his confession that Jesus was the Messiah, how much he didn't get about that. He said the right thing, but didn't have the right Messiah idea. And he had some earthly idea of a Messiah, not God's. So we'll take it up there next time.